all we can to help families as prices soar, and we'll continue to do so. But we could do so much more. Independent European countries of Scotland's size are wealthier and fairer than the UK. With all of our resources, with all of our talent, why not Scotland? With the full powers of independence, we can build a country that reflects the values, aspirations, and hopes of our people. Not a country held back by Westminster governments we didn't vote for. Westminster is broken. It offers no alternative to the suffering people are facing. So while Labour scrap pledge after pledge, this is my pledge to you. The SNP and the government I lead will always be on your side. At a time when we deserve real change, the Tories and Labour simply offer more of the same at Westminster. In the Scottish Parliament, we will give our all to protect you from the worst of their cruel and heartless policies. We will be resolute in keeping you and Scotland on course for a better future as an independent nation.
Well, like, I had an idea about 3 o'clock this afternoon, maybe 2, that I would do a wee stream. And as per usual, I ended up with about 458 tabs open. No structure whatsoever. Not entirely sure if I'm even going to go through even half or even a quarter of what I've got up on the screen. But despite that, they'll all remain there just in case, thus running my laptop to its full capacity, meaning it'll be slow, meaning it'll be lag, But I thought, why not do a little stream purely because I'm now on holiday. So probably be the only stream I'll do on this channel until next year. And just kind of go from there. So don't really want to depress people too much, given the fact it's Christmas Eve and all that. But in my efforts to get a few things together to make a wee stream, as I say, I ended up going down a myriad of different rabbit holes to such a point, like the things that I was initially going to speak about. Like, in fact, I'll just share the screen so people can see this. This is, I'll get to the comments in a second. Let me just share my entire tab. Yeah, here we go. This is someone about a little like, great stuff. So initially it was like 3 things up here, and then as time progressed, and literally I've ended up, I don't know. I don't even know where to begin really, but I'll stop sharing now. So who's here? Who is here to join me for a wee while? Start from the beginning. Budgie Burger, what like? How do? Stevie Cray, how's it going? Merry Christmas to you as well, bud. Tricky Woo, what like? How do? Parker, what like? How do? I think if I say that often enough, maybe people will finally begin to start adopting the Highland lingo, House of Babushka, what like? How's it going? And I think that's probably it for now, isn't it? Aye, it is. So, coming to an end of 2023, it's probably the first year that I've been on YouTube and whatnot where I've started taking a step back in terms of the amount of content. And it's a word I really despise. It sounds so American. Like, hey, I make content, But I really have taken a step back in that regard. Still doing kind of a lot behind the scenes in terms of like spending a lot of my spare time looking into stuff, but I've just not really put it into video format. Partly due to laziness, in all honesty, but second of all, it's I did sort of need to take a step back from constantly churning out videos in the hope that some people might pick it up and run with it and whatnot. And there was an aspect of it being somewhat disheartening as well, because time after time after time, you would spend hours going through PDFs and whatnot to make a video that would be about 30 minutes, 40 minutes long, and like nobody would watch it. So I just kind of got to a point where, what's the point, And now I'm at such a point now where I think I've let the laziness take over. I sort of struggle to even make a video now. So much easier to just clip stuff or appear on streams and whatnot and show stuff, which I'll attempt to do tonight. But as I say, there's no stream structure here. There never is with me, to be honest. That's why I'm much better when I'm with people. Every stream that I do by myself, you can commend my ability to ramble and talk shite, but God, minus points for my ability to structure a stream. That's for damn sure. But aye, 2023. Not really much that can be said about 2023. You know, there's quite a lot of people that like to think positively when we come towards the end of a year, you know, and start anew next year. And realistically, it's more or less, and forgive me if I'm sounding a bit too pessimistic here, but it's just more or less the same shite, different year. You know, what's changed really? Not much. Okay, the current thing has changed, and that will change again as it always does. Went from Ukraine to now what's currently going on in the Middle East. But in the grand scheme of things, on a sort of national level, nothing has changed really. The clip I played there at the start, independence. Sure, there'll be much more talk of that as we kind of get close to the elections and stuff like that. Well, general election across the UK. William Smith, 2023 could have been the beginning of the S&P. You know, there is some truth to that as things stand at present. But again, it's the sad thing about Scotland, which separates them from the rest of the UK, is the fact that for the people that do, you know, go out and vote and whatnot, you know, they're all like lefties, you know, so they don't want to vote Labour because Labour are now sort of smeared as the same as the Tories, and obviously it's verboten to vote Tory in Scotland. Therefore, it kind of leaves you with very limited amount of options. I do believe, if I was to put a guess on it, that the SNP will still win, but I don't think they will necessarily win as many seats as they have been in the past. But that kind of leads to another quandary in regards to some sort of coalition with the SNP and Labour. Sort of dreadful to think about, in all honesty. Scott Sarmer, what like? I don't know if you wanted to come on or not. I've got like 400 tabs open, but there's no structure to that. If you do want to come on, I'll fire you the link, like, but it's more just a sort of layback thing, and I might go over a few things. But no, when it comes to the sort of domestic matters, though, I think sort of the thing that culminated or concluded 2023 was the sort of recent revelations that our population has it's increased yet again. And just get that up there now. Sharing my screen. Share screen. This one here. So our population grew to a record high of almost 5.5 million. But it says here that the results from the 2022 census show a slower rate of growth than between 2001 to 2011, when the population grew by 200,000 plus. Very fitting image, by the way. I'm sure that was done on purpose, but that's here nor there. You know, it's the highest ever recorded by Scotland's census, and is a rise of 141,000 since the previous one. Right, and then it says that that without migration, this bit's key here. Without migration, Scotland's population would have fallen by about 49,000. Now, obviously, I've talked about this in the past, but I thought I would just show you in real time a little quick experiment you can do on any search engine. I'll just use Google. All right. Scotland population at record high, 2012. Okay. Latest estimation of Scotland's population from 2012 is 5,300,000 plus. Highest ever, an increase of 13,000. All right. Let's type in 13. National Records of Scotland estimated that in mid-2013 there were 5 million plus people living in the country, a rise of 14,000 from the previous year. And then it says Scotland's population reached a record high of almost 5.33 million. And if we go on to the Daily Record article, though, just to sort of continue on from this, population of Scotland reaches record high in 2013. So that's 2013, 2012. And albeit at this point in time, though, births were still playing a factor. Probably immigrant births, more or less, but nonetheless. Just to scroll down ever so slightly to show that it says, for the 10th year in a row, more people came to live in Scotland than left the country to go and live in the rest of the UK or overseas. Inward migration exceeded outward migration by approximately 9,000 plus between mid-2012 and mid-2013. Right, so there's always an emphasis on immigration, inward migration, etc. Right, let's back out of here. Let's type in 2014. Just keep going. Why not? Because it's quite important. Scotland's population continues to rise, and it's reached its highest ever total in 2014. Right, so it says national records of Scotland. Okay. And if I was to click on this, as it says here, at its highest ever, right? If I was to click on that, I guarantee you there'd be a reference to immigration. So it always is. 2015. Okay. It just goes on and on and on. Let's see what articles come up here. None that can get off the cuff, nonetheless. It says it there anyway. I just thought I would read an article quickly. 2016. Okay. Latest estimation of Scotland's population in June 2016, another 5 million plus, the highest ever, and an increase of 31,000. Over the last 10 years, the population has increased by 271,000. Okay. 2017. Oh, why not? The population of Scotland in the 30th of June 2017 was 5,400,000 plus. The population has increased every year since 2000, and in 2017 was the largest ever seen. Right, I'm just going to keep going. Just to prove a point here. 2018, yeah, again, record high. We've got another record high. And what do they start saying here, though? With migration continuing to be the main driver of growth. Now, bear in mind, at this point in time as well, though, our birth rates are beginning to plummet. All right, okay. 2019, our statistics also show a number of first on record results. The population of Scotland is at a record high again, with the rate of population growth increasing following 2 years of slow growth. All right. At just under 50,000, we recorded the lowest number of births since record began. So for over a decade up until this point, our population keeps reaching new heights because of immigration. Add that alongside now, at this point in time, simultaneously, births are at the lowest we've ever seen. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? 2020, pretty sure things were a bit slower there, but they continued to increase, obviously with the COVID nonsense at that point in time. But this is it there. Scotland's population was at a record high, Well, anyway, we'll come to 2023, obviously, where we are today. And same story, immigration. So what do we say about that? At what point do people start to get a little bit concerned about that? As they again say here that National Records of Scotland data shows that without migration, the population would have decreased by about 49,000. So all of our immigration, most of our population growth, if not all of our population growth, has come more or less from immigration. Year on year on year, our population reaches a new high, breaks a record from the year prior. This has been going on for over a decade. And at the same time, our births are at worrying levels, far, 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 far below replacement level at this point. It's pretty simple maths, really. But yet we still live in a sort of society where it's taboo to even question this. And you're never going to hear this from our politicians. They don't give a fuck, really. No, they don't. But you have to wonder what the future holds for us when this is the fucking consensus. This is just the norm now. Yeah. So that leads me on to this. Here we go.
We've been enriched in it by the contribution of those who have chosen to make Scotland their home. The positive impact of migration to Scotland can be felt in our families, in our communities, in our workplaces, and indeed in this very Parliament. Every day we see the important role people have chosen to make their home in Scotland play in supporting the delivery of our public services in all sectors of our economy, in the academic and student communities of our colleges and universities, and in our rich shared culture. While we should be rightly proud of the history of migrants in this country, we also know that migration is vital, main driver of population growth in Scotland. In addition to international migrants choosing Scotland as their home, inward migration from the rest of the UK to Scotland has been greater than outward migration from Scotland for every year since 2001-2002.
What matters to Scotland? Yeah, let me just get rid of that tab. You know, slowly but surely, I'll get rid of these tabs. Yeah, immigration matters to Scotland. This is a sort of tripe that you expect to hear from these people. They just continuously bang on about an aging population as if that somehow gives them the green light to continue to advocate for immigration. And as what I said the last time I did a sort of live stream, it was a StreamYard video, but I just never went live. I pre-recorded it. I kind of emphasized the point that seems to be forgotten in all these discussions, and that is that the more that they just rely solely on immigration to solve all their population woes, the less, if any, discussion is ever had about what that holds for the future on a demographic level. Never at all. And obviously the clip that I just played there was in relation to the latest, or one of the latest papers from the SNP and their never-ending tirade regarding independence. One of their papers, that one being immigration in independent Scotland, you know, when we're part of the European Union. But no, I just thought that I would sort of start off with this because it sort of does tie into, albeit, yeah, I have to sort of leave my bias out of things because I'm not really somebody who's of the belief that politics in general or going out to vote and whatnot makes a fucking difference. But when they talk about independence and then the people that are against independence, this is like the sort of dominant discussion in Scottish politics and always has been for as long as I've been sort of at an age to give a shit about it. Independence or unionism, immigration or less immigration, etc. Never at any point, though, in any of these discussions do you hear anything about demography or oh my god. Wow. Thanks for lowering the tone of my intellectual powerhouse-esque discussion there, mate. Fucking
Well, I just want to say thanks very much for having us, mate. I just thought I would come and spread a little bit of wholesome delight.
Oh, you've certainly done that. I'm not entirely sure that doesn't breach some of YouTube's rules, to be quite honest, you know, with their nudity policies, etc. But I'm willing to take the risk because it's a bit of eye candy for the stream, to be honest. So,
If in doubt, Maggie chapping it out, as they say.
Oh, aye. Gotta love a bit of Maggie, like. But aye, as I was before you like appeared in the comments and that, I shared the screen and showed that I've got about 900 tabs open. I have absolutely no intention of going through even a slither of them, but they're there if I need to. No structure to this, it's standard practice. You know the script when you come on a stream of mine, eh? But,
standard practice. I mean, I remember, just for the folk in
the chat, there was a couple of occasions where you would have like all these tabs open for a Sunday stream, and it would be the most absolute like abundance of articles, like 8-9 articles on a singular point, and then we would get through like 2 subjects, and at the end you're like, I've still got about 40 tabs open. We should have got through a lot more. And it's like, mate, you need to break that fucking down, man. That's just too much to cram into a small period. But nonetheless, mate, Mr. Consistent, I like it.
I honestly, I was going to make, it was actually, my stream was just really going to be about that, what I just talked about there, and then just kind of ramble on from there a bit. And then I ended up with about several tabs, because I was looking into like if the sort of critical race theorists in Scotland, because they've gone very dark in recent months, very difficult to obtain any like new information on them. But I started looking into if there'd been any more stuff that I'd not seen in regards to them sort of redefine what it means to be Scottish, you know, Scottish identity and whatnot. I funnily enough did come across a few things, hence that sort of rabbit hole with about 50 tabs. And then I ended up on UNCRC shit, then that led me to more tabs. Climate anxiety, etc. Mate, it's just ridiculous. I've got enough stuff in my tabs to I could punt out a video once a week, all of 2024, and still have tabs open. You know, but
I will say to Mr. Hamza Useless, peace be upon him, for winning that Scot of the Year award.
I
mean, if there was ever a non-existent award for a more worthy, non-existent guy, it would be that right there. And I think I think everybody's covered it. But I'll just give my 2 cents on it since you were talking about, try to break down of what defines as what's Scottish and what isn't. If there was ever a more desperate wave to try and appease, and I will use this word very particular, the minority of people who fundamentally believe if you spend 30 minutes in the Glasgow airport prayer room, that makes you Glaswegian. What an absolute pandering to the people, because this fundamentally highlights their weakened position, desperate position at that Hamza Yusuf had to go through such a, what do you call these people, opinion pieces, because that's what it is. It's people's opinions on a panel to be nominated for such a fucking non-entity, and then try to pass it off as if it's national news. It's laughable. It truly is laughable, and it reeks of desperation, and rightly so, because a lot of people are waking up to the joke what has become Scottish politics.
Yeah, I mean, can you even give me one example of anything he's done that could arguably justify him winning that award?
I mean, well, I remember we covered a story some time ago, and it was it was a nursery. Remember, he accused the South Asian nursery of being racist. And the one thing that I think that everybody in the room already knew, but the far left and the woke within Scotland seemed to think that it was only white people that could be racist, and that was quite pleasing, seeing people of colour argue amongst themselves of who's racist and who's more racist, and there wasn't a white guy brought to the forte. That was that was quite pleasant viewing. But other than that, the guy's a cunt.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Like, absolutely, and I mean he's unelected as well. That's the bit that I find the most remarkable about it. Rishi Sunak's exact same. For all the SNP, that's what I find remarkable about Scottish politics. People spend so much of their time engaging in unionism versus so-called nationalism, and like they're so bereft of self-awareness, especially in a Scottish context, for months and months and months through all the shite that was going on with the Tory party down in Westminster, with them changing leaders every 2 seconds. Throughout all of that period of time, we had the SNP and the vast majority of the Scottish media, for that matter, crying out for a general election, snap election, because it's undemocratic to shove somebody in to Westminster who the public didn't vote for. Fair enough. Yeah, when Westminster never did that, they never obliged. Oh, that's their democracy deniers. This is anti-democratic. This is why we need independence. But yet, Hamza Yusuf, who the fuck voted for him? Nobody. And yet there's crickets. Crickets in regards to an election in Scotland, so much so that you don't even hear the Tories in Scotland, the one party you would expect to call for an election to get Hamza out, ain't even done so. Silence.
Fear of racist language, no doubt, something along those lines. Firstly, let me say, right, when it comes to Rishi Sunak, that man looks what I would imagine if you had a gay clownfish with Down syndrome. And you got a picture of that. That's exactly what Rishi Sunak would look like. But this is the thing with Hamza, right? Hamza Yusuf represents a ward in the Glasgow South District that lives in a place up in Dundee. Now, I don't understand why that is. I don't understand, and it goes for any politician anywhere in Scotland, that if you were to live X amount of miles away, and you're really trying to enforce things within a community that you have no identity with, you're no in tune with it, you don't even live within a local or radius, if you like. The one thing that constantly chimes at that chap Smith is decisions are being made for us hundreds and hundreds of miles away in a galaxy far, far away. But yet, Hamza Yusuf is still doing the exact same thing. And this is a lot of the thing with Scottish government, as you know, as everybody else fucking knows. It's all theatre, it's all a deflection, it's all a ploy, because if rational minds looked at Holyrood for what it is, they would see it's a defunct parliament. They would see it for what it is. It's a bunch of unelected, unworthy corporate prostitutes that are in it for themselves to make a few quick quid, that pass legislations that people didn't vote for, to push things and narratives that people do not wish. If it was up to me, mate, honestly, if it was up to me, I would round them up and put them in a gulag and start all over again. But I don't make the rules. I'm just a guy that's just, coming into Christmas period, having a few cream crackers, a cup of tea, and laughing at the absolute state of affairs in Scotland, because now we're going to be getting into an even harder year, and people still feel there's a need of compliance with the political system. I don't know what to say anymore on it.
Well, I'm going to share in my tab here, because this article is one that I made I made a video on it a while ago, but I think it's even more fitting now, because in all honesty, albeit, I made a video on it. I think even Chief Moody made a video on it back in the day when he used to make videos, but never really got the attention that it deserved. But it sort of plays into what I was talking about at the start there regarding our population, because on that point there, that people, they're corporate prostitutes, as you say, and whatnot, but each and every year, our domestic issues continue to intensify, and they're just completely ignored, whether it's open borders, whether it's our quote-unquote cost of living crisis that's totally not manufactured, whether it's beginning to accelerate the sort of trajectory for Scotland, well, the UK in general for that matter, to achieve climate targets, etc. The list is endless, really. Councils beginning to adopt some of these policies, LEZ zones and whatnot. This article here, this is a fucking doozy, by the way. I mean, it's fucking, I don't know if you've seen it at the time, but I mean, where is it? I just need to get my, because I've got so many tabs, trying to find it when I'm trying to share the screen. Bit of a cunt, not going to lie. But,
see, on that note, though, right, see, whilst you're getting that, Blackjack shared an article, I think it was through our Telegram channel, and it was about basically, don't have turkey this year at Christmas. No, I think it was made with Twitter, actually. Have fucking, have bugs and soy instead.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Again, it's all this fear porn and kind of a romanticising, the whole playing your part can make our planet more sustainable, more viable, and more vibrant for all. When quite frankly, it's they're pushing, like they did with a lot of things in the last number of years, they're pushing health suicide on you with these fucking narratives. But a lot of people will sit there and they'll switch off, and they'll have their, their manufactured laboratory meat. They'll have their tofu drizzled in soy sauce, and they'll drink their fucking oat milk, and they think, oh, I'm a good soldier, look at me, virtue signaling, fucking happy. And it's like, that is not good for you. That isn't good for your health. That's not good for your mental health. That there is going to be the thing that brings you down. And I have never seen, see all these people that live this sort of a structured lifestyle, I have never seen a healthy looking one, and one that has had longevity on age compared to people that have ate proper animal fat and meats all their days.
Aye. And as well, like even on that point there as well, things like COP, once a year, they all fly off to whatever it is in their CO2 emitting planes to make decisions on our behalf and splurge our money. The latest announcement being an increase to the so-called Climate Justice Fund, where we give away millions of taxpayers' money to help poorer nations, aka black nations or brown nations, because we are responsible for man-made climate change. So they've got their narrative that nobody's agreed upon, apart from politically, ideological reasons. Some will agree, and for money, some will agree and whatnot. But the science sure as fuck ain't settled in that regard. But yet they pretend as if it is. And they continue to press on ahead with policies that, in time, if they don't already, will begin to affect the everyday man and woman's life. And that's what you're voting for, you know? But that's what irritates me more about it, really, because it doesn't matter who you vote for. That's cross-party, you know? So whether or not you're for independence, quote unquote, or whether or not you're for unionism, etc., it does not matter. Because at the end of the day, you'll get one or the other, or none, right? But you're still going to get climate nonsense. You're still going to get all these other things that nobody voted for, you know? You see that time and time again with councils across Scotland, constituencies. They're not all SNP controlled, but they're still all churning out the same narratives, still all planning to implement the same policies, you know?
Two things, right? The first thing is, recently there was a thing published and it was to do with Scotland, and I do believe it's the same down in England, right? That there is an abundance of councils that won't see out 2024 because they're already basically bankrupt, right? But this is obviously going to tie in with like sustainable cost cutting ways, sustainable spending, and all that shite for the next forecast, which is timely to say the least. But do you remember that arsehole Charles when he was at the event and he was talking about this individual's net worth has more than the global GDP? He's got a lot more resources at his disposal compared to combined world leaders. And he says effectively that when they bring in this new change, which is what they've been pushing for with their political campaigns in the last number of years, it's going to be done in a military-style campaign. Now, there's only two types of military-style campaigns that you get. One, when it's authorised by the government, which comes in the form of martial law. Nobody wants martial law. And the second one's a coup d'etat, where it's basically a military takeover, which also nobody wants. There is no middle ground in between that. And one can't help but look at the obvious factors with the declining economy, infrastructure's crashing left, down, right and centre, right across the board. We've got a social crisis at our hands. We've got a housing crisis at our hands. We've got escalating crime rates, and we've got soldiers from all walks of life sponsored by the United Nations up and down the country in fucking hotels galore. They're just waiting for the thumbs up. Everything's already in place for it, and we have been sleepwalking into a position where we have been divided as a people over fear porn and politicised agendas to split the Brits that live in these very islands. We have allowed ourselves to be consumed by outside entities, whether that be refugees, whether that be foreign aid, whether that be welcoming of multiculturalism, whether that being casting out our own people, or just generally turning our back within our own communities to such a degree that we are absolutely broken in every sense of the word. And the person who is meant to be head of state of this country is the wolf in sheep's clothing, who's literally told everybody what is going to be done in the name of the green agenda, and still people haven't caught on.
No. And on top of that, though, like as I say, it's cross-party consensus, so you don't even get any pushback on that, in all honesty. I will say, though, to what you were saying there, like, I'd always taken away from that it was just going to be, it was another way of effectively saying there's going to be a massive clampdown, state overreach, you know, by force, by hook or by crook, you know, because we need to do things for the planet. You know, we need to achieve our climate targets. Therefore, things are going to get strict, for lack of a better term. The state's going to close in on you and make you abide by their rules. Because if you listen to a lot of the rhetoric that they talk about, they say, oh, the coming years are going to be challenging. We're going to have to make a lot of tough decisions, right? This is what they say. They never really allude to what they're on about there in that respect. It kind of goes without saying if they're sincere, and we know they're not, but if we have to achieve our targets by 2030 or whenever it is, or the world's going to burn to a cinder, then naturally as the years tick on by and not enough's been done, it means that in the remaining years, a lot more is going to have to be done in a short period of time. And I can't help but feel that the overuse of the term crisis or emergency is carte blanche, really, to implement what they fucking want. And on top of that, it's the excuse that they could require a later date to really accelerate things. You know, there's all this sort of talk of acceleration, but we've not really seen it come into full fruition as of yet. But I think it's coming. Like we're slowly sleepwalking towards what they intend in terms of this net zero, green, carbon-based economy and whatnot. But in order to get there, they're going to have to do a lot of forcing people out of cars. For example, forcing people to get heat pumps is another one. You know, forcing people. If they can't get people to change their behaviors willingly for the better of the planet, they're going to have to do it by force. You know? Because there's a sort of open-ended question in that respect. What happens if people don't want to give up their car? What happens if people don't get heat pumps? What happens if people don't want to insulate their house? What happens if people don't want to go along with this shite? Well, they're going to have to do it another way, aren't they? So I think that it could be argued anyway that when he was referring to a military style, I think that's what that was about. Because in the future, you're going to see the state really fucking putting the foot down there. But time will tell, really. But it kind of comes back to the immigration, because obviously on the subject of climate change and whatnot, this is something that you're not really seeing so much of in terms of like their documents and whatnot as of yet. But on that note, they're one of the S&P's latest papers. I posted this little telegram. Don't have the tab open, and I'm not going to go and find it. But in their paper regarding independence and immigration in a post-independent country, there's a section about climate refugees. Yeah, this is the latest hot topic, right? Because they are sort of laying the foundations for that as well. So
you've actually covered that before.
Yeah. Back when the Migrant Compact was first signed, they sort of modified it or updated it after it was signed to incorporate climate change as a factor for people moving from A to B. But there was never really that much of a reference to it going forward in terms of when it came to, like, you know, politicians talking pish at podiums or documentation and whatnot. But there is starting to become an ever so slight increase in references to that. And I think they are laying the groundworks for that. I think really that the Migrant Compact was signed purely for that, in all honesty. Because their excuse at present obviously is the migrant crisis, right? Okay, well, it's this so-called crisis. Surely that could be resolved and stopped and prevented going forward. So they're going to need another excuse, aren't they, to continue the fucking overflow. What better way than to pretend that they're all these black people that have melanin in their skin, you know, so they can withstand hot temperatures. They need to come here because it's too hot. Aye, right. But this I don't know if you've seen this article before. Have you?
Neil Kelly's big read. Aye, in fact, I believe that we have actually spoke about that on stream. If no, you've at least done a video on it.
Aye, I did it. Like, I think it was like the end of 2021 or something. I made a video on this. It just came into my head today again, and I just thought, for anybody that's not seen it, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, like, but there's just a few things in here that are very, well, they sort of vindicate people like me and you. But if anything, it's absolutely astonishing that something like this could just be posted in a mainstream news outlet in Scotland, and like, yet still to this day, oh, you're far right, fascist Nazi. If you even insinuate, if you even reiterate what is the fucking headline of that in your own words, you are all the evils under the sun, but yet they can tell you so matter of factly in their little articles, you know, that, and as well as the sort of thing that I was talking about at the start, when they keep using an aging population as a justification to continue opening the floodgates to people to come here. The fucking long-term ramifications of that is the same, you know? The long-term ramifications of importing people into Scotland, because as it stands at present, Scotland's population is quote-unquote aging, aka no enough children are being born, right, to replace the population. So if you're importing people alongside that, in time, dare I say, this future of Scotland could very well be Asian, if not African, right? So it's pretty simple maths, but apparently that's far right nowadays. But just coming down here ever so slightly to this bit, it says that the future of Scotland, like the rest of the Western world, is probably going to be Asian. The country will find itself swept up in the coming Great Migration. We will see a brownification of Scotland as demographics and mass migration coalesce to change the complexion of the West. Scotland's political culture, with its pro-immigration slant and our geography and natural resources, which sees us well placed to withstand the climate crisis, will make us a magnet for a new generation of migrants set to reshape the 21st century. Right? So comes down, and we'll see what else. Dr. Parag Khanna, the world's leading intellectual on migration, presents a stunning analysis of the future. To the pro-immigration side of the political debate, such as Nicola Thinlip's SNP, Khanna claims will be well received. Others in the populist anti-migrant camp will be infuriated or even fearful. Khanna's comments will play directly into Scotland's increasingly fraught culture war. All right. So then there's some more shite about him here. I'm just going to come down a bit. Born in India, blah, blah, blah. And then he says, in every century since, the number of migrants has increased because the number of drivers of migration has increased. In the past, some Europeans wanted to get rich in new colonies. Others fled disasters like the Irish famine. War played its part, as did the opening of America, Canada, and Australia. When it comes to the progress of migration through the centuries, the decimal place always moves to the right. We went from millions of migrants to tens of millions of migrants. And by the end of the 20th century, we've got hundreds of millions of migrants. Right? And then it says, today, climate change has been added to the forces compelling migration. Throughout this century, swaths of the planet will become uninhabitable. It's predicted. It's always predicted. Where'd you get that? Oh, your computer models. Displacing entire populations. And there's one other thing in here from memory that I will highlight before I stop sharing here. Is it that bit? No, it's a bit about Scotland in particular. Instead, Europe has a rise of anti-immigration, nationalist and populist politics. Go figure. That's Germany. There's one other bit in here, but as I say, this is a long time ago I covered this. But Western democracies, it's just fucking demographic dilemma. Yeah. The Western nations with the loudest anti-migrant voices are the same places where elderly people literally die alone. As aging demographics clash with the lack of care staff, all of the metrics to measure a civilized society, one would surely be, do you let old people die alone? I can think of no greater moral crime than treating old people like that. It's downright barbaric. Western society should be ashamed of itself. It's repugnant. Right? Okay. So it goes on and on and on, but I'm not going to continue to share that. But I fucking hate arguments like that, in all honesty. I really do. But surely, and what I'm about to say here, might be deemed radical to some. If there is absolutely nothing that can be done to prevent the decline of our population, surely you should be restructuring our society to accommodate, as opposed to just opening the borders to people. Because that article, the same way that nobody else ever seems to address the elephant in the room by going down this train of thought with, oh, we just open the borders because of our aging population. What does that mean for Scottish people in 100 years? What does that mean for the Scottish people, if there's any left by that point, in 200 years? We will cease to exist. That's not me catastrophizing, and that's not me being hyperbolic. That's not me being overdramatic. That's not me trying to, highlight doom porn for the sake of it. But that's the mathematical reality of the future. Right? Should we not be restructuring society in order to accommodate, while we look into what can be done to reverse trends, if anything can be done? Looking into ways to incentivize native births, or at least try. Looking into ways to encourage and educate the population on what this means for the future. Or dare I say, since they're all about democracy, surely the fucking public should be asked if they're okay with this. They've got no say on the matter. They've got no say whatsoever. To quote Laura Tyler, we were never asked. No, we were not. It's just commonly accepted there's a political consensus that Scottish birth rates are declining, so we need immigration powers to be devolved in order to solve that problem. But nobody at any point ever talks about what that means for the future. Never at all.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I'd seen a video recently, and it was a Chinese lassie, and she was talking about that the world could be Asian. And see, mathematically, the way she lays it out, could be done in 2 generations. It would kind of set you up in a 10-year period, and the majority of white men could find themselves in a position where basically they're just falling into positions with Asian women, and they're just birthing machines, as you already know. Scotland, for being such a small-sized country, you look at cities
cities like London, and it's took several years to get to the point now where things are really in a shaky peg. That's a fraction of the time for this country. And by a large part, there's like a whole load of European countries that fall into that. You're talking like Balkan nations, places like Croatia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Herzegovina. You've got places like Norway, Finland, Lithuania, Estonia that would just be in a flicker of an eye. So it is set up though to be that way, because no matter what way that you look at this, this all stems back to the same thing: the need to take away the European ethnic peoples. And why is that? That's a very simple thing, and I've said this on stream many of times, and it's your stream, mate, so I'm not going to get all into the nitty gritty, but it is quite literally in the Bible between two brothers for the longest time, and that is that. It is been foretold, it was happening, it is happening, and it's going to continue to happen to such a point. There is an interesting thing though of like, just we are talking about like the whole climate refugees, and there's going to be a lot of places and that are not going to become basically viable to live, and you've got all these nutcases like Zuckerberg buying up land and basically making it their wee getaway bunkers. And this seems to be a trend that's been getting popularised and more momentum as each year passes. And a lot of people think maybe it's the polar shifts happening. Maybe there is an element of climate change. Maybe there's some unbeknown reason to us to why that keeps happening. Well, truth be told, folks, you go to the book of Revelation, you go to chapter 6, and you read from 15 onwards, it kind of lays that out. Kings of the earth, great ones, generals, rich and powerful, and everyone will hide themselves in caves among the rocks and mountains. Fall on us and hide from us, for he who is seated at the throne, the wrath of the Lamb that shall come. All this stuff already foretold. Have no fear, because the people who are the persecutors of this world will be wiped away, and quite literally the bat of an eyelid. They will have their day of judgment, and it will be beautiful. And I don't really care. I'm not really scared.
Hello? Oh, I think his mic got muted there. You there? It just happened just as I shared my tab, so I don't know if I fucked something up. Oh, I don't know. He was on a wee roll there too, but can anybody hear me? Aye, for anybody that's in the chat. So it's no me. Who else is still here? Steve Craig, oh, you're back. Hello, bud. And Stephen Smith, hello. I don't know where he went. Scots, can't hear you, bud, if you are still there. Yeah, I think he might have. It was just as I shared the screen, though, which was weird, so I thought maybe I'd done something. But, yeah. I'll see if he comes back. But, no, they're definitely... well said. Then he just got out. It's just... They've always got an excuse for immigration. Always. And then, obviously, the sort of pushback that is received... people are just chastised. I'm going to play this video in a second. I want to actually get his opinion on some of the shite that these people are saying here, but I'll wait to see if he comes back. As it stands, he's away, like, but well, like, how's it going? And he looks just yeah. Well, come on. I mean, some of the tabs that I've got open here, like some of the stuff that's directed towards children, it's just vulgar, really. There's obviously the sort of things that encouraged me to start looking into things. I got spurred on by the the population increase annually and whatnot, but it was me looking into a wee bit Scottishness, and they're trying so hard to present children with these just toxic, lying resources, all about Scottishness and identity and whatnot. And I think it's all been done in order to normalize and ease the process of mass migration. You're going to have a much harder time importing people to have children on your behalf if there's a sort of common accepted fact that there is a distinct ethnic group, an indigenous group within said country, because naturally then an influx of people who look nothing like them, an influx of people who in time will have children on their behalf and begin to outnumber them, they're displacing the indigenous. So we have to eradicate that fact. We have to eradicate the difference between the indigenous and the non-indigenous, the native and the non-native. We have to create a narrative, redefine these words and create a narrative that we're all one. Therefore, it makes it easier, It makes it more palatable, shall we say, because there's nothing questionable about importing people to come here and have children on our behalf if we're all one. That's what I think is going on here, as by and large. And partly that, right? But also on top of that, it plays into ever so slightly the sustainable development regime, which of course wants to eradicate the nation state. And how do you eradicate the nation state? Well, you have to obviously get rid of sovereignty. We don't have that anymore. That's a redundant term. But you have to eradicate the concept of national identity, which is exactly why they're going after it, which is why there is myriad of different policies, and especially in the educational sector, that is geared towards redefining national identity. So much so that it's inferred that it's racist to assume that Scottish people, phenotypically speaking, happen to be white. It's racist. We're all one. We're all Scottish. Scotland's always been diverse and multicultural. Immigrants built Scotland. Did they? What's their examples? Fucking Vikings. Oh yeah, they really had a major impact on Scotland. But yeah. When I think of a Highlander, that guy's exactly what I'd imagine. What? Oh, yeah. All right. What happened that you're there? Are you? Was it just your internet?
No, I got a phone call. I can't stay much longer, but the minute you put this chap up with a nose like that and an interesting appearance, I thought I need to go back, because I'm sure this guy's going to kind of tell us along the lines of, we are out supporting the independence cause. We are here because we demand justice for Palestine. We are all Scottish and we are going to get us over the line, and we will all live in harmony, because at the end of the day, Allah wills it. I'm guaranteeing it's going to be something cross-lined like that.
Well, let's see how close you are to the truth, huh?
It's highest because of the Tory government and the Home Secretary, Swallow government, or the former Home Secretary. Secondly, the war is going around, like in Palestine, the war in Ukraine, the hate against asylum seekers and migrants. So St. Andrew is very special.
I think today's a really important day, and it's been on the trade union calendar for so many years, and the STUC continues to be at the forefront. And I think we're challenging the anti-racism regime along with fascism, and the current situation that we have in Gaza, I think it's just made us all the more aware about the importance of being a collective and fighting and standing together, challenging racism every day.
I would say over the past at least 5-6 years, there has been an increase of negative thoughts towards migration, and I think our politicians play a huge role in this, especially the Conservative Party with their policies. We've got the Illegal Migration Act 2023 at the moment, and that's going to put a significant pressure on people who are arriving to the country.
I'm here today to say no to racism, and in one word, communities for all.
I don't think I'm going to say any more to that, to be honest. You were quite on the ball with the first guy, but isn't that a pretty picture what's on the screen right there?
It's, do you know what? I'm sick and tired of this rhetoric, right? First and foremost, right? Let's get absolutely clear. Do I want to be talking about St. Andrew, right?
Aye.
This whole narrative of St Andrew would have appreciated this. No, St Andrew would have wanted it. Bullshit. St Andrew wouldn't have had any use fucking muppets in this country. That man was a Christian warrior, first and foremost. Secondly, he was the son of Jonah. He was Greek, for fuck's sake. He never looked anything remotely like they people. That man was an apostle and a martyr and died, and he's your patron saint and should be respected as such. But no, what you have here is these infidels will come over here and use this language to try and appease you and endear you with your cultural and religious icons and everything else. They try and use the Bible as a sense of making you feel warm, that they're here to represent your needs and your wants. And this is the fine detail that is in Islam. They get in about it because, unfortunately, folks, they people, they read their books, but they know how to appease because it is in their nature. The devil is in the details. And they come over here and they'll use that, and people think, oh, that's great. They don't mean any harm. But it's a ridiculous stance because they don't even remotely refer to St. Andrew. They don't like St. Andrew. They don't want St. Andrew. They don't even want Jesus. They want Sharia law. And the way for them to get in is Christian endearment. Now, the thing is, with a lot of Christian, and I don't mean this to sound bad or to ridicule or to mock or to be angry. Stop being pacifists. It doesn't tell you to be pacifists in the book. Pick up your cross. Call these people for what it is. It is lies. It is deceit. It is unwanted. Jesus Christ, like Peter, wasn't a fucking refugee. First and foremost, right? Let's put that aside. The second part is the Palestinian conflict to be tied into the Ukrainian conflict is an absolute piss take, considering that the Ukrainian people historically have been getting bombarded a lot longer than the inception of fucking Palestine. And the reason why we know this is because if you look at ancient maps, you can go back and that part of the land was called the part of the Ottoman Empire. It was British Mandate. It was under all sorts of different names, but it was never known to Palestine until recent times. That is a fact. The longer the maps, the harder it is to find. That's the second thing, right? The third thing here is the clash of culture. The clash of culture that comes in very subtly and nicely and appeasingly, like I said earlier on, but it totally erodes. It totally erodes your identity. It erodes your culture. It erodes you as a kin with your neighbours. It erodes everything that your ancestors stood on that rock and decided to build upon a country, a nation, and a people for you. This is nothing more than anti-European, anti-Christian, anti-white rhetoric, so that these people are empowered by the subtlest of actions possible. It's simple tricks, but it's very easy to deflect.
Well said. 2 seconds. I'm going through my tabs there because it sort of tied in nicely to continuing on from that, because now I'm on the sort of the attacks that are going on in our schools regarding identity. Just trying to see if this one here, developing global citizen. Oh, man. But nah, it's what fucks me off. A lot of it fucks me off. And I always find it difficult to sort of add on to your answer because they're always well said. So I'm not going to sort of tarnish what you said there in that regard. But one thing I will say is, let me share this one actually. Where's my screen? What I will say is, time and time again, you see these immigrants, whether it's people that were born here to immigrant parents or people that have just moved here, but time and time again, it just seems to be so socially accepted to berate the pushback, you know, berate people like me, yourself, or anybody else who's our way inclined to some degree, berate the very mere ideas that we have, which should be common sense, to push back against this nonsense. You know, this constant obsession with trying to insinuate that we're all the same, trying to insist that there is no such thing as a native-born Scot in our regard. You know, you could any other country where this is going on, the same thing is applicable. But in the case of Scotland, trying so damn hard to push the notion that there's what is a Scot? What's really a Scot? Anyone can be Scottish. All this shit, and if you even hint at a disapproval at that, you're met with pushback and you're chastised, and in some instances can even land you in fucking jail depending on what you say. Let me see, anti-racist, no, oh mate, see, having like 58,000 tabs open, it's doing my nut in it, but I think I found it. Is it this one? There we go. So now I just need to find it on the share screen thing. Fucking hell. I think it's this one. Nope. That one. There we go. So remember, like years ago, like 2 years ago or something, there was all this talk about the S&P where in their new anti-racist resources, they were wanting to ban kilts. Now, the Scottish Daily Express, credit to them where it's due in regards to bringing attention to the resources, but that was a lie. That's not what was said in the PDFs, but anyway, that was a PDF called A. Adams Bairns, and it's since been revamped. I didn't know this until looking into it a bit earlier on. I came across it by happenstance, but they've recently sort of republished it. Don't know why, but they have, and it's come along with a website dedicated to it with multiple different things that you can have a wee read through. But they say here, for example, that this resource uses a broad range of evidence types to engage students. These include songs, images, maps, written accounts, and photographs. Anyway, the sources have been selected to also support the development of global citizenship, knowledge, and understanding. And the methodologies suggested will support the development of global citizenship skills, values, and attitudes. In particular, students will have opportunities to develop. Let me scroll down a bit. Knowledge and understanding of identity and diversity, globalization and interdependence, social justice and equity, skills of critical and creative thinking, self-awareness, empathy, communication, conflict resolution, and ability to manage complexity and uncertainty, and how to take informed action, and values and attitudes relating to diversity, self-esteem, inclusion, respect for human rights, and a belief that people can bring about change. But emphasis obviously on diversity and identity more specifically. Now, there is a tab that I've got somewhere where they sort of go into how they define identity. But as I said, I've got so many fucking tabs open. Is it this one? It could be this one. Nope, it's not this one. But nonetheless, I will find it at some point. But yeah, that leads me on to, I'll just play a little bit of this while I try to find that, because I find this bit in particular. I'll share this screen. This is there's a YouTube video of them talking about this. Exploring equality and diversity in Scotland, past and present. This resource examines the way in which past events, including migration, the slave trade, and the Highland clearances, have led many of the challenges we face today. This resource supports young people to explore events and their legacies, and lessons can be learned from for a fairer future, right? But just this is obviously over an hour long. I'm not obviously playing all that, but the last little fucking bit here, this guy talking, this absolute, least said about him, the better. He's called Davy Donaldson. This is his closing remarks. Very interesting to what he says here.
But to just add to it briefly, and I guess as a part of a response as well to one of the questions around Scottishness and people identifying as Scottish, and this whole kind of a question of identity, right? For me, this resource is really quite important because on one level, for my people, it's able to bridge the gap between the oral knowledge system and the written knowledge system. And of course, that is a microcosm in terms of there are many different ways of experiencing the world. There are many different life ways, if you'll permit me that kind of language, right? And I think that's utterly crucial when it comes to notions of identity, particularly in terms of national identity, because we're living in the world, again, reacting to recent events. The far right is on the rise across Europe. And we have, neo-Nazi groups openly, parading in Scotland. So I think the timing of this resource is utterly crucial in the sense that it allows us to really critically analyse what is a nation's identity, who belongs within a nation, right? And who gets to say that and who doesn't, and how do we experience, a life way within it, nationality and within questions of identity. I think this resource really does kind of push a lot of doors that can have quite deep and at times political conversations. I mean, I'm a firm believer that, I was a non-party political, but
essentially, if you want to push for anti-racism and you want to push for social justice, what you're doing is inherently political, right? Because someone will always disagree. So I think what this resource really does is it opens a lot of questions. It allows us to critically analyse some really abstract and at times unwieldy concepts.
Righty, here we go. First and
Yeah.
foremost with that, right?
Can I mute that? Fucking hell.
He spoke
there's
a
not-
lot there, mate, about
Eh?
he spoke a lot there about national identity,
Yeah.
culture, right?
Mm.
Now, can you give me 2-3 minutes here?
On you go, bud.
Right. So, first things first, reading straight after the Declaration of Arbroath, first line on the document. Now, bear in mind, folks, Declaration of Arbroath, the absolute sovereign birth document of our country, our people, right? Right out the fucking bat. To the most holy Father and Lord in Christ, the Lord John, by divine providence, supreme pontiff of the Holy Roman and Universal Church. Right away for the word go. Our people acknowledged what foot our country was to be based on. Nae ifs, nae but. The language there is very, very, very clear. Let's go to the next paragraph, right? Again, I'm just giving you wee bits and pieces, but this will all make sense. Most Holy Father, we know from the chronicles and the books of the ancients, we find that among other famous nations, our own, the Scots, has been graced with widespread renown. It journeyed from the greater Scythia by the way of the Tyrian Sea and the Pillars of Hercules, and dwelt a long course in time in Spain amongst the savage peoples. Right? So right away, we've established what fit we're staying in this country, where our people have came from to the modern place. And I'm going to go to this next bit here, which is quite an interesting read nonetheless. Gives a wee second to dig this up, because this is interesting, right? Now this, folks, was written at a time when the Scots and the English were fighting, right? Back and forth. This and what I'm about to say is in no way to slander the English people, but think of this in modern day context. This is very important. The most holy fathers, your predecessors, gave careful heed to these things and strengthened this same kingdom, and people with many favours and numerous privileges is being the special charge of the blessed Peter's brother, who was happened to be St. Andrew. Thus our people under the protection did indeed live in freedom and peace up to that time that the mighty prince and the king of the English, Edward, the father of the one who reigns today, when our kingdom had no head and our people harboured in no malice or treachery, were then unused towards our invasions, came in guise of a friend, an ally to harass them as an enemy. The deeds of cruelty, massacre, violence, pillage, arson, imprisoning prelates, burning down monasteries, robbing and killing monks and nuns, and yet outrages without number, which he committed against our people, sparing neither age, nor sex, religion, nor rank. No one could describe nor fully imagine unless he had seen them with his own eyes. That right there is in our Declaration of Arbroath, which pretty much gives us a clear indicator of who we are, what we are meant to be, and what we are meant to do in terms of invasion and violence and upsetness and rousiness within the communities. So these people sitting here harbouring all that fucking shitey rhetoric have absolutely no idea who the fuck they are. And if they do have a rough idea, then they're clearly out for the shekels, which means they are not of our own. Point blank period, and there is nothing else to be said after that point.
Man, that. I mean, it's funny that you bring that up there, because there was a video I made a while ago when I was at one of the locks just rambling away, and it was about Scottish identity and Scottish independence, because quite often you'll hear a lot of these SNP types at their gay little indie marches and whatnot referring to Scottish history as if that somehow emboldens their claims for us obtaining independence now. But these are the same people, as they refer to Scottish history, who simultaneously imply that, you know, there's no such thing as an Indigenous Scot or a native Scot. And, you know, we're all one, that usual routine. And I found it very difficult to accept that people who are will use the likes, so much so the thing that I was actually referring to was people were talking about William Wallace at one of these events and whatnot. Like, who you're going to refer to historical figures from throughout Scotland's history, while you simultaneously are off the ilk of people who chastise people like me for being what would be considered on paper anyway as an actual Scottish nationalist, using the old definitions where, nationhood sort of symbiotic with national origins and whatnot, the old definitions before it all became so airy-fairy. Nationalism, you didn't really have to preface nationalism back in the day by saying, I'm an ethno-nationalist or whatever. Kind of went without saying because of national identity and whatnot. Now, as I've said already, that's all by the by. But I just find it fucking distasteful when people continuously refer to our history. If there's no such thing as a native Scot, then is it really our history? It's just the history of this land. You've got no connection to any of these people and whatnot. That's what pisses me off, people like that. I did find that other thing I was going to go on there, which I will do, but I know you don't have that much time, but I was wondering, do you want to answer your man's question here? Because it's obviously directed at you as opposed to me. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I do. I think there's enough historical proof to make case that, and this is something I've actually said on stream on my own channel before. I think the more that you look into the European peoples and how they've went and grown, became nations, and enlightened the world in terms of taking a natural element of land, whether that been in Africa, whether that been in modern day America or Australia, and taking lands and making them into civilizations and producing fruits and vegetables on those lands, bringing much joy and harvest. There is many clear indicators, if you were looking at it biblically speaking, to turn around and say that there's and again, I just speak for myself, that there is enough proof in the pudding that the European people are the lost tribes of Israel. Israel was never a nation, it was a man given a name, and the name was a very descriptive name, who would go on and have nations that would bless the four pillars of the earth. Right now, we look at that in a biblical context. Israel as a country, although as much as a defunct country it may be, doesn't have nations. These people aren't blessed. They do absolutely no hard work. They have never completed a singular biblical prophecy. So I hope that kind of answers that in full.
Nah, that's fair enough. I mean, it contradicts the facts of the matter that 42 sort of alluded to here, though, mate. I mean, we all know who built Stonehenge, We all know, mate. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it, eh?
Well, the interesting thing with other places, it's the same as like Skara Brain stuff, right? I think it's in the book of James when they talk about the siege of Jerusalem. Now, in the Israeli sense, they actually say that happened and then the Jews dispersed out with Israel at a certain date. But the book of James, when it was looked at it from theologians and historians, they reckoned that it happened 50 years before. And let's get it absolutely right. Jews and people of Judah are two different groups of people completely. But there was already disperses of people from Egypt that had been out into Europe before they had been out into the Middle East. So the time from that frame to these stone circles and Skara Braes and all the rest of it happening absolutely fits. There is abundance of really good channels on YouTube that go right into this in a archaeological and anthropological sense, and they do tremendous work, very intelligent and articulate people. If anybody's interested, hit me up on Telegram. I'll dig your channels out and I'll send them over to you because it is definitely very informative.
Well, get on Telegram if you're not. All right. But, just this here as well. Where am I? It's working. I need to start deleting some of these, but I think I've got the right tab open. Where did it go? It's funny. I can't find. Oh, there we go. you see the screen, aye?
Aye.
Right. So look at this shit. So, like this is what fucking repulses me, because at the end of the day, like everything we've spoken about in brief tonight, like we can talk about it till the cows come home, but the reality of the matter, this cancer is sneaking into Scottish education, unbeknownst to the vast majority of the public. And it's all hidden under the guise of simply being anti-racist. You know, we're just teaching kids not to be racist, right? So it says this is not a resource designed to teach young people about racism. Instead, it explores the diversity of Scottish identity as a whole and looks at historical events which have shaped and influenced Scottish society and identity, the legacies left from emigration, the Atlantic slave trade, colonialism or colonialization, including racism, inequality, discrimination, and prejudice, along with powerful voices of resistance and change and action for a fairer world. As such, there are lessons in this resource which explore aspects of racism and encourage young people to think about how this is present in society today. Right? Goes on though. It's vital to that extra care and support is given to safeguarding BAMEs who are racialized. Communicate with your pupils before you engage the entire class on the topic of race, explaining that you will be talking about racism and inequality, and it might be particularly difficult for them. Right? This is just fucking insanity there. It is also important to support white Scottish children and young people who may not have lived the experience of racism so that they can use the correct terminology and understand the need for sensitivity. And they've got a helpful glossary that can be found, you know? But there's like, so there's just a sections that are dedicated to, you know, what does it mean to be Scottish, you know? Like our diverse identity, apparently. Well, I mean, what's diverse about it, really? It's not really that much diverse about it, but the fact of the matter, they wish to perpetuate this notion because this is all part of, you know, deconstructing what it means to be Scottish. And then, of course, they've got the different definitions of racism, some of them anyway. Interpersonal, internalized, institutional, structural, you know, and their glossary of terms here, people of color, etc., white privilege, white fragility. You know, these are all too common nowadays. White fragility. Come up though to one of the hyperlinks. Further reading. No, is it that one there? Highland One World. It might be. I might have it open another tab. There's another thing as well regarding identity. I thought there was a bit more to it than this in this tab that I had open here, because, as I say, there is a part where they're now starting to deconstruct the identity. But here, is it this one? Fucking hell, man! I hate having about 48 tabs open. Like, jeez. But there was an article as well there, though. Yep, that. This one here.
Sorry, mate. I hate to be that guy, but I'm going to need to shoot.
Yeah, no worries.
What I'll do is I'll message you later on when I get back in the house. For everybody in the chat, thanks for listening, and you and yours have a very Merry Christmas. God bless each and every one of you, and have a good night. See you, mate.
Later on, bud. Catch you later. Take it easy. And then there was one, you know, good global citizen. You know, I mean, it's the term global citizen. I mean, it's one of those words that has a very malevolent undertone. That it's there if you wish to see, really, but so many don't. But yeah, it's that word that they use to sort of categorize a good portion of the shite that they're introducing to kids in our schools. Global citizenship education. This article here, I need to start closing some of these tabs. It's getting a bit haywire here. But let me see. All right. What makes me Scottish? Now, I found this. This is the Global Citizenship magazine for schools, right? But this was on like all the Twitter accounts from the usual suspects, the sort of people that shape Scottish academia, you know, all the usual suspects like the Critical Race Theorists, but Education Scotland, Learning for Sustainability Scotland, etc. What do we understand by the term identity? It is commonly understood to be multifaceted, multi-layered, and something that is unique and personal. Then what does it mean to have a Scottish identity? Does a Scottish identity exist? What makes us Scottish? Questions like these, explored in primary and secondary settings, provide a rich context to learn about historical events, including those sometimes missed, hidden, or forgotten in the curriculum, or better understand how Scottish identity has arrived at its vibrant, diverse, and multicultural place today. You know, in 2001, the census showed that Scotland was like 99% white, right? Now, naturally, out of that 99%, not all of that was what would be considered white Scottish, or dare I say, just Scottish. Don't need to slap white in front of it, goes without saying, right? There was no fucking diversity. There was no multicultural. And there are historical points in time that they will always refer to somehow justify what's taking place right now at present is Picts, Romans, and fucking Vikings. Pretty sure the Picts were always here, but as far as the Vikings or the Romans were concerned, grand scheme of things, didn't have too much of an influence on the overall gene pool of what constituted Pictland / Albaland to modern day Scotland. So it's just waffle. Immigrants built Scotland. Well, they kind of didn't, did they? And then, of course, they'll refer to emigration when Scots moved elsewhere. Yeah, they did. They did move elsewhere. But at home, Scots still remained. All right? This notion of Scottish identity is not up for debate. Well, it is in the modern time, of course. Of course it is. They're deconstructing what it means to be Scottish and asking you stupid rhetorical questions like that. What it means to be Scottish. Does a Scottish identity exist? Of course, a Scottish identity exists. You know? Of course it does. And for the people out there who shit on my belief in, you know, DNA and ethnicity, and they'll say, well, you know, like your great grandparent might have been a Roman or whatever the fuck. Of course he wasn't, or she wasn't. I'm just using that as an example. I don't really think you're that much better than the BAMEs that are coming over here today and trying to insinuate that there's no such thing as a native Scot. Just so you know. Anyway, whilst we have much to celebrate, questions surrounding Scottish identity, past and present, also bring to the fore many of the issues and challenges we face today and provide a meaningful opportunity to reflect on these and take action as both Scottish and global citizens. What questions about our identity? When was there ever a question mark over our identity? The answer to that is when they started to deconstruct it. You know, this was never at any point up for debate, nor was it a contentious topic, nor was it even in need of an answer. It just went without saying. The national identity of Scotland has always been as it always was until now. Anyway, and then it says, a key issue that exploration of identity brings to the surface is that of colonization. When we talk about decolonizing our curriculum, we can work to ensure hidden, forgotten, or missed voices are referred to and share with our young people. Moving away, I love the shitter. This ties in nicely to what Scott Sommer was saying before he left in regards to an attack on European peoples at large, where it says here that moving away from a Eurocentric narrative, right? This isn't the first time I've seen this referenced. In fact, it gets referenced all too often. Eurocentrism. We need to move away from that concept. Why? Because black and browns can't relate to it. And if in case you haven't noticed, that's who we're importing en masse. That's the new Scots. That's the people of the future who will live here. Therefore, they need to be able to relate to what they're being taught in a school setting. You know, it's very racist to have a Eurocentric narrative. You know. And creating space to explore a range of perspectives, lived experience, and retelling of events by BAMEs. Voices supports an anti-racist approach, which enables all young people to see themselves represented in the contributions to what has made Scotland what it is today. Always referring to representation and the requirement for it to be so, you know. Goes without saying, if you move to a predominantly white country that's historically always been white, chances are you're not going to see yourself reflected all too often in historical textbooks. But that's a fucking problem. And of course, it's a problem because they've deemed it one. Yeah. And then, of course, they've got a rake of links. This website here is one of many, but it's honestly... And global citizenship education is supporting learners to be active citizens, participate and believe in the power of action. Right? And what does this reflection on Scotland's past and its many voices and stories mean for our young people today? Central to global citizenship education is supporting learners to be active citizens, participate and believe in the power of action to bring about positive change. Students, as they are increasingly posed with problems relating to themselves, the world, and with the world, will feel increasingly challenged and obliged to respond to that challenge. What challenge would that be? Well, you know, everything's racist at present. As momentum grows around anti-racist education and decolonising the curriculum, there is a palpable desire to learn lessons from the past. Let's create braver, safer spaces for young people to really explore Scottish history, identity, and diversity, and reflect on the question posed often by the Scottish traveller community. Are we all really A. Adams Bairns? Right, okay. Which will lead me back to that fucking video if I can find it. Show you a bit more of this, how it's introduced. I'll come to the comments in a second. But oh man, it's just so annoying having all these tabs. I found it. It's all good. I will do so, just like that. Speed, put it up to 1.25. Quality. There we go. Share this instead. Aye. This is them talking about this document, which is going to be rolled out into Scottish schools if they so choose to accept said PDF and whatnot. This is for teachers. All these websites are for teachers to engage with and take what they wish. You know, all the things at the side of the screen. Some of the teachers might not necessarily want to implement some of the shit that you'll see, but other things they will do. You know, it's up to the school, it's up to the local authority, it's up to the local constituency at large. But make no mistake about it, by whether it's at the extreme or whether it's just the bare minimum, this shit is being introduced into schools all across Scotland, right? Unbeknownst to the public, all because of, I don't know, progressive politics, I guess. So, yeah.
Areas and subjects. And it is the totality of all that is planned for children and young people and what they experience as a result of that planning throughout their education. Now, Scotland's curriculum places learners at the heart of education, and as part of their learner journey, all children and young people in Scotland are entitled to experience a coherent curriculum in order that they have opportunities to develop the knowledge, skills, and attributes that they need to adapt, think critically, and flourish in today's world. So I want to zoom out a little bit and look at the wider picture and make some of the dots connected. So we are educating our children and young people to become responsible, confident, successful, and effective citizens of the world. And in this way, shape the future of what is to come. And now I'm going to rewind back to May 2020 and the event that that sent shockwaves throughout the world. The murder of George Floyd shook the world, the entire whole world, in a way that many similar tragedies before and unfortunately since have not done so.
I'm just going to let this play out a wee bit because obviously this was where a lot of the shit that you see now in Scottish academia, as far as so-called anti-racism and critical race theory is concerned, all came off the back of George Floyd. So I want this woman to just sort of introduce this shit, let her speak about George Floyd, and then I'm going to come back to Scottish identity because there's a section here where they kind of go over a part of this PDF and the sort of activities that are required, but you'll see yourself just the depths that they will go to in order to just totally deconstruct and render the concept of what it means to be Scottish redundant. So yeah, I'll let her speak about George Floyd as if that has any relevance whatsoever to Scotland or the UK for that matter. Yeah, fucking George Floyd. Right, okay.
The brutality and public nature of this atrocity highlighted the harm of racism and the stark reality that racism can and does kill in extreme cases. This was a worldwide wake-up call that could not be ignored or brushed under the carpet anymore. It made us think and ask questions. Why is it that in today's world, when we place such high emphasis on the moral values of social justice, fairness, and inclusion, when we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, United Nations Charter on the Rights of the Child, and our national legislation such as the Equality Act 2010 for UK, an education system based on the values of wisdom, justice, compassion, and integrity, we are witnessing such harrowing incidents rooted in prejudice and discrimination. Things need to change, and this state of affairs cannot be allowed to continue. And one way to bring about positive and desirable change and to shape the world we want to live in is to look at our education system as a vehicle of change. In Scotland, we are in a period of education reform, and there is, and within that, there is general acknowledgement that what is on offer at the moment does not include or meet the needs of all of our learners and the communities that they belong to. There is a need to work towards a more inclusive, diverse, and decolonized education system. And by inclusive, we mean education as an ongoing process aimed at offering quality education for all while respecting diversity and the different needs and abilities, characteristics, and learning experiences of the students and communities, eliminating all forms of discrimination.
Right. Okay. So George Floyd, as I said, was a sort of gateway drug into sort of shoehorning in a lot of this shit, right? But all of that as well. So we need to decolonize the curriculum in order for it to be, you know, reflective of all, because again, we can't have the notion of it being Scottish centric or British centric or even Eurocentric, because we are diverse now. We're importing people who can't relate to that. Therefore, we need to diversify, quote unquote, our education in order to reflect all. That's not how it works. It's not how it should work. Because the reality of the matter, and I hate preaching to the choir, but it's so fucking obvious to me, but yet somehow it seems to be lost in translation for some out there. Not so much the people listening right now or whatever, but I mean just in general, when they listen to this tribe, seriously. I mean, it should go without saying, as I said, that anybody moving here has to accept or should know beforehand that they're bringing their child, if they have any, or if they plan to have any, they're bringing their child into a predominantly white country, a country that's always been white. Therefore, they should expect education and whatnot to be reflective of that population and its history, right? That should be commonly accepted, common sense, dare I say. But now that's a fucking problem, right? Because the real issue here is that status quo that I just spoke of sort of cements, without having to put it in writing anywhere, it cements there was a people, it cements that we are distinct from them, you know. It makes, and what they intend to do, what they wish to do, will lead to, via their diversification, it just leads to complete and utter indifference. We're all, you know, indistinguishable from one another. We all share the history of Scotland because we're all Scottish, right? As things stand with our Scottish history and, you know, historical white figures and whatnot, that sort of cements the concept of Scotland being white. That helps to cement, dare I say, the national identity, etc. That is the very things that they're trying to get rid of. And I mean, even here, taking a global citizenship approach, but is it this bit? Show how the resources work. No. So look at this. I mean, look at the boxes here, right? So I'll let her speak about.
Taken from the final theme, which is taking action for change. In this activity, young people explore a number of campaign tactics, so using historical evidence and sources, like you can see on the screen, to examine different campaign tactics used by the abolitionists during the abolition, incorporated into the resources. This one that you can see on the screen here, and this is as part of the Scottish identity theme.
Scottish identity theme, right? So this is for kids, obviously. So obviously, like if the teacher downloads this PDF, that will be accompanied by links and whatnot to like Microsoft PowerPoint or whatever. And then they can print off these materials. So arrange the above statements in the order that you feel most least true, relevant, or important using the diamond ranking formation. And then it's Scottish identity, what makes you Scottish. And then they've got stupid shit like, I am Scottish because I go to school in Scotland. I am Scottish because I support Scottish international sports teams. I am Scottish because my father was born here. I am Scottish because I was born here, right? I'll tell you what it doesn't say in any of these choices for children to pick and choose from. It doesn't say anything about DNA. It doesn't say anything about culture, like not lineage, sorry, not culture. It doesn't say anything about that. Oh, no. The closest you get to that is where it says that they have a father that was born here. Right? That's the closest you are going to get to an acknowledgement that there is such a thing as a native Scots. Right? So they're picking apart and trivializing Scottish identity. I mean, yeah, you could argue this is low-hanging fruit. Why you waste your time talking about this? But I'm just trying to emphasize the point here that this is for children. So our so-called Scottish National Party, right? The nationalists, yeah? Really? Does this look like the sort of thing nationalists would do if they were in charge of a country? Render their identity obsolete? No, I don't think so. This is all done in the name of progression, right? And modernization. They voted for it. Yeah.
So in this activity, learners would reflect on what it means to be Scottish and consider if, in fact, this can actually be defined, or does it just mean something different to all of us, depending on our lived experience and our identity? They then work together to use what we call a diamond 9, which is what you can see on the right-hand side of the screen there, which is a methodology which encourages young people to discuss a range of options and rank them from most important or effective to least. And space is given, you can see, so those 9 cards on the left-hand side would be cut up and arranged by young people, either working in small groups, or it could be as a whole class or in pairs. And crucially, space is given 1 or 2 of the cards. It's always a good idea to leave them blank so that they can put in some of their own ideas as well.
It's absurd. Absolutely absurd, to be honest. Stop sharing that now. Get rid of some of these tabs. But yeah, that's just a wee bit of... It's just relentless. I mean, honestly, I could spend all day talking about what I've come across in the last few hours before I went live. Because, you know, they're working away in the background. They never stop. But it's just becoming a bit more hard to obtain their actual resources more often than not, because of all the shit that happened last year in regards to attention being drawn towards them on Twitter and whatnot. Anyway, that leads me on to the other thing I was going to bring up today before I sort of part ways. If I can fucking find it. Oh, mate, so many tabs. It's doing my nutting. But climate anxiety, yeah. I want to sort of bring this up because of the UNCRC. So, for anybody that wasn't aware, in Scotland, we've passed the... you take it easy, buds. Have a good Christmas. I don't know if I'll be around by the time you get back, in all honesty, but... later on, buds. And I'll just see if anybody actually said anything while I was looking at all that. How many positions does that... You know what? I've never even heard of that woman before, in all honesty, but it's always the same. These random non-entities get positions and you know, of authority and power where they can influence educational reform, etc. And they've got carte blanche to just push their cancerous ideologies. And as far as I'm concerned, they're inserted into these positions, and they don't even know that they are there for the reason that I'm about to say. They're just useful idiots, really, because again, it ties into what I was on about earlier in regards to eradicating nation states. Therefore, you need to sort of deconstruct national identity, etc. So they'll just fire in a rake of these people to push that culture shift. You know, these people think that they're a winner. These people think that they're going to obtain power for themselves, but they don't really realize that they're just being used. But nonetheless, that sort of doesn't get away from the absolute malevolence that's on display here. They want to teach children, revise history, deconstruct children's identities, and normalize immigration and whatnot, and all that entails to children. And then it's just never ending, really. So UNCRC, so many tabs, so many tabs. Fucking hell, man. Understanding race, can get rid of that. I can get rid of that. Yeah. Scottish identity, fucking hell. As I said, I could probably make like a video per week for the entirety of next year, and I'd still have tabs open. But there was one, no. But yeah, the UNCRC as well, before I forget, before I go on to something else, like that's the United Nations Children's Rights Charter. Well, that's obviously been passed now. I wanted to come on to that briefly just to show some of the crap that entails, but you can get rid of this now, because it kind of ties into global citizenship education and whatnot. And it also ties into the the climate change BS that we're seeing. And get rid of that as well. Thank fuck for getting there. Like, we are getting there. Can get rid of that. On a winner. Climate anxiety in the classroom. I do apologize. It's very unprofessional of me, but I just have to do what I've got to do. But yeah, I'll share my screen here because I just want to kind of show people the sort of stuff that you can come to find if you ever go through these. I highly encourage people go through these websites or check their Twitter accounts, honestly, because it's never without updates and new resources and whatnot. And if anything, it gives you an insight into what the future holds. But before we even get to the future, it gives you a bit of insight into what's taking place in classrooms, you know, because this is just never ending. Our resources. Nope. Where the fuck is it, man? See, when you've got this many tabs open, you can't actually find when you try to share the screen, you can't see the tab that you were going to get up. Like for this, for example, tackling climate anxiety in the classroom, right? This resource is for teachers to support thinking about the impact the climate emergency has on learners from upper primary through to secondary. Designed in response to fears and challenges voiced by teachers, the resource contains a series of short videos capturing ideas and reflections from teachers, young people, and other experts, and an accompanying resource boards. Right, but just on this website in general, Global Citizenship WASDEC, that's what they're called. Right. Global citizenship is a way of living that recognizes our world as an increasingly complex web of connections and interdependencies, a world in which our choices and actions may have repercussions for people and communities locally, nationally, and internationally. It nurtures personal respect and respect for others wherever they live, encourages individuals to think deeply and critical about what is equitable and just, and what will minimize harm to our planets, helps learners to grow more confident in standing up for their beliefs, more skills in evaluating the ethics and impact of their decisions, right? Okay. And then you've got education for global citizenship, anti-racist education. Doesn't take long for that to crop back up. Educators will need to consider what it means to be actively anti-racist. Anti-racist education acknowledges that just following the status quo is not enough to counter the deep roots of racism. Learners need the opportunity to explore stereotypes and prejudice, racism, etc. There are clear synergies between global citizenship and anti-racist education. Global citizenship asks us to interrogate our assumptions and bias, recognizes that we interpret the world through our specific social context and positionality, right? And there's resources, there's many resources in these websites for you to go through. Climate anxiety in the classroom, plenty on Palestine and whatnot. Let me see what we've got here. If it would load, joys of having 38,000 tabs open, doesn't wish to load. There's some more there, you know. Remembering empire, yeah. Talking with children and young people about race and racism. Why? Why the fuck do we need to do that? Critical mass. This 5-lesson teaching pack supports learners to explore how gender. I wonder what that's about. Go figure. Back to climate anxiety, though, you know. So this is the new hot topic. Share this screen here. Climate anxiety. So not only are they teaching kids from very young ages about climate change and the climate emergency and the climate crisis, now they need to talk about climate anxiety. Could it not be argued that if there's such a thing as climate anxiety amongst children in our country, that could be put down to some form of child abuse? When you insist on prioritizing the idea and lessons that would have children believe that the world is going to burn to a cinder in the coming years if things aren't radically altered, right? So you're catastrophizing and you are filling these children's heads with total nonsense, but fear porn, doom mongering, frightening the life out of them, making them feel like their future is doomed, right? Climate anxiety is a natural response from such a thing. But instead of acknowledging that maybe them laying it on a bit too thick could be part of the reason for why that's such a phenomenon, no. We just need to have digital education resources for teachers to think critically about the impact of the climate emergency. So this resource is for teachers to support thinking about the impact the climate emergency has on learners from upper primary through to secondary. The Highland One World and ScotDec work with the IDES network to advocate for a global citizenship approach to learning about the climate emergency. Using participatory learning around the learning methodologies enables young people to enhance key skills and values to develop greater curiosity about the world and feel greater agency for positive change. Yeah? Meet the contributors. Yeah, okay. I'll go through a couple of these wee ones.
Hi, I'm Lucy Power from Rowanbank Environmental Arts and Education.
Hi, my name is Sophia Dragescu. I am a project worker at Children's Parliament and I work across projects involved with climate change, learning for sustainability and artificial intelligence, all separately, but mainly working in the facilitation of children's participation.
Hello, I'm Catherine. I'm 17 years old and I'm a young person in Aberdeenshire who has a passion for climate and basically combating climate change. But I'm also someone who deals with anxiety and is quite worried about the future.
My name is Duzan Zaya. I'm from Malawi. My mother is a farmer. I myself am a teacher. I teach at Blantyre Baptist Academy. I'm a business studies teacher.
My name's Early Dana here.
All right. And yes, to your question, yeah, I can't remember the name of the boy, but I think it was a student committed suicide last year due to climate anxiety, as it's been deemed. But it's just the fact that there's no age limit to where this stops. I mean, they're even children as young as like primary 1 or 2 or 3. They're all being taught to some degree about this nonsense, you know. And of course, they get away with doing so because they're trying to educate the generations of the future because we have a legitimate crisis on our hands. But oh wait, let me scroll through a wee bit more of this. So this is the resources I say for climate anxiety. There's multiple videos you can go through here if you were really that bored. Using a rights-based approach to explore the climate emergency. Now, obviously, this is in relation to the United Nations Children's Rights Charter, which is being passed again, but this time around, it won't have any pushback from the Supreme Court. It's going to go through now, which is carte blanche to just continue to politicise children in Scotland, more or less.
Many of the children we work with report feeling negative impacts on their well-being if they are made responsible instead of them having rights and adults being responsible to keep them safe and protect them. So by making a child responsible for such a critical and fast-moving issue such as climate change, that is going to have a negative or likely to have a negative well-being on a child's health because they will realize that they can't always influence such decisions because their rights are not being fulfilled, and they might feel powerless or helpless or hopeless. And there was a recent global study by the Lancet Global Health Foundation, which found that, well over half of the international responses from children and young people said that they were hopeless, helpless, and also felt confused as to who really is responsible for the climate emergency. That's not their rights being fulfilled. So learning through rights and teaching about and developing this understanding of agency and power for children and actually really ensuring they have that power and agency can remove that risk of them feeling hopeless, helpless, or unable to influence their lives. Secondly, I think learning through rights, we often see in our consultations that are rights-based, children really grow in confidence. So not only will their rights be more fulfilled, but they actually have the confidence and ability and support to own those rights. And I think that's where we get into this idea of constructive hope. We can't just tell children to be hopeful, but if we show them that adults are taking responsibility, taking action, and also ensuring children's right to participate are being fulfilled, hopefully that hope will motivate everyone to address the climate emergency.
Right.
And I think a really good example of this was
waffle
we
indeed.
facilitated the
Absolute
participation
waffle.
of children in Scotland's climate assembly, where there was some research work done to show that all the participants actually really grew in hope and commitment and motivation to take climate action and be really involved in change. That actually dropped off again after the climate assembly finished. And many of the participants cited that the intergenerational aspect of it and having children participate alongside adults was something that really gave them hope. So you can see that learning through rights and children's participation rights very specifically can lead to the better health and well-being of everyone involved, which means that children will be in a more...
Yeah, enough of that. But yeah, climate anxiety. And there's a common denominator here, in case people haven't really noticed. The vast majority, as always women. Always 9 times out of 10, women. Makes you think. But yeah, there was something else that I had there on this topic because I'm obviously coming to the latter part of the stream. It's always the same for me, though. As I say, I have far too much shit open. But this here, there we go. If I can open that. Climate change resources, share this tab instead. This is from the same people. Climate change resources for teachers. Climate change is not just an environmental issue. It is a complex challenge which intersects with social justice issues such as global inequality, peace and conflict, migration, colonialism and racism. This resource is designed to help teachers navigate the many options for supporting learners to explore the issues and work together to bring about positive change. It's just a climate curriculum, you know. Comprehensive climate crisis curriculum to empower the climate strike generation. Schemes of work, lesson plans, all resources, teacher guide and parent packs are differentiated for all ages from 5 to 18. And all you need to do is simply register and you can have all of these resources at your fingertips. You know, this is for teachers to take the initiative and start to shove this shit into their classrooms. And we wonder why things such as climate anxiety, is on the rise. We wonder why the younger generations are more susceptible or more on board with these topics at large. You know, it's not really a secret. They're educating, quote unquote, the children of tomorrow or the adults of tomorrow. They've completely reformed our academia and they spend more time focusing on subjects such as this. And in turn, it's a conveyor belt for our youth. You know, so while I started the stream off by expressing concern about the demographic decline in the future of Scotland, you know, the generations of the future don't give two hoots about that. No, they don't. They just want to see the end to the rights to private transportation. They want to see the end of meat consumption. You know, they want to see a borderless world. They want to see climate justice at the heart of everything that we do. A key part of global citizenship education is supporting young people to think critically about how they can respond to global issues. In an increasingly uncertain world, it's important that young people have the opportunities to create hope by taking part in action towards a positive future. You know, exploring climate justice, the impact of climate change, climate justice, hope and action, friends of the earth, etc., etc. If it's not anti-racism, it's this shit. And it's absolutely fucking everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. But hey ho, what can you do? Because the vast majority of people don't even know it's occurring. So, and again, it's just that point where I sometimes wonder what is the fucking point in even highlighting it. It's just sneaking in the back door, and people are completely and utterly none the wiser. So, what can you do? But the last thing on this sort of subject is the UNCRC, obviously. Share this tab instead. And this is the Education Scotland.
The right to play. So lots and lots of the articles also cross over between 2 or 3, which in a longer session can have some good discussion about why that is and lots of the kind of intricacies around that. But really, children's rights and well-being are intrinsically linked. So the indicators, they do overlap, they're connected, and they're kind of fundamental to understanding what children and young people need in order to grow and develop and thrive. So the implementation of the UNCRC is kind of a mechanism as to how well-being can be achieved. You use the kind of Scenario Wellbeing Wheels quite often, or you might use the articles of the Moving to think a wee bit more globally, these are the Sustainable Development Goals, which some people might be familiar with. Some people, again, might be a bit new to looking at rights through this kind of sustainable lens. But these were adopted by all members of the UN in 2015, and the aim was to provide a kind of shared blueprint that's about peace and prosperity for people and the planet. And really aiming to 2030, which isn't that far away now, are these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And they were quite an urgent call for all countries, both kind of developed countries and developing countries in this kind of global partnership, recognising that ending poverty and other deprivations go hand in hand with health, education, reducing inequality and supporting economic growth. So lots of things you'll see there relate to our work in CLD really broadly, things around access to education, zero hunger, equalities, reducing inequalities, no poverty, lots and lots of the global goals relate to what we do in our sector. But really thinking back to children's rights, healthy, well-nourished, well-educated children who are protected from violence and abuse are the best guarantee of long-term sustainable development for our world. And on the other hand, the rights of the child can only be realised in an appropriate environment. So it's peaceful, it's prosperous, it's protective of the child, and it fosters human development. So they're completely interlinked, and there's a good document that has linked the articles to the Sustainable Development Goals as well. It's quite an interactive tool, which again we'll share a link to if you want to explore a wee bit more about that kind of global context. I'm just going to take a wee
So obviously, I just wanted that to play out there because as the title of that video is Introduction to Children's Rights. This is Education Scotland. And time again, they will always make reference to the Sustainable Development Goals because it's sort of the elephant in the room here. It's the root cause of a lot of the shit that passes for education in Scotland nowadays. And time again, they will refer to this when they're not talking about children's rights. Now, obviously, in the context of children's rights, the way that it's going now, they have a right to be listened to and taken seriously. They have to be educated on matters that before they can, confidently speak on issues, they have to be educated on the topic at hand in order for them to make informed decisions, which of course is the precursor for them to be able to start teaching them all about climate change, for example. They've got a right to live in a healthy environment, a clean, healthy environment, right? Plays into climate change again. All interlinks. The anti-racist BS is just one part of it. But everything that seems to be going on in Scottish schools nowadays, you really can't find a lot of it linked to this. But I think I've probably rambled for far too fucking long now at this point. Is there anything else on my tabs? Climate anxiety. Our rights planning is in full swing. Oh my days. So much stuff open here that, I'm probably just going to have to save in Word documents and maybe at a later date punt out into individual Telegram posts or whatever. But in the meantime, I will not be doing anything of the sort. I have had enough for one evening, I think. But yeah, I guess that sort of kind of ties in nicely back to where we initially were at the start, though. Albeit, yeah, kind of went off topic ever so slightly. But, this, back to good old Scottish politics. Share this tab instead. Building a new Scotland, right? Funnily enough, that's the wrong one. It was meant to be that one there, migration to Scotland. For far too long, Westminster spent time blah, blah, fucking blah, right? But the reality is, though, they are just obsessed with immigration. It's the answer to all of our woes. And they even say themselves here that without immigration to Scotland over the last 10 years, Scotland's population would actually have fallen. Instead, our population has grown. And that means that there are more economically active people in Scotland now than more than a decade ago. One of the many beliefs of migration is that this increased productivity supports our aging population and can fill in the gaps of the labour market. Okay, well, let's just look a wee bit more into that and really spell out what that means. Time and time again, they make these baseless claims as if they're beneficial, filling in the gaps in labour markets. Well, that would imply there's a shortage. Would that mean there's a shortage or a decline in Scottish people? Yes, it does. An aging population, that's because we're not having enough children. So there's more people dying or growing old than there are being born to replace them. Therefore, it's a good thing we have immigrants coming here. Therefore, it's a good thing we have people coming here to have children on your behalf. It's a good thing that we have people coming here to dilute our population. Whether they be white, whether they be black, whether they be Asian, they're not Scottish. It's the reality. And the same could be applicable to any other country where this is taking place. You import German people into Japan to have children on behalf of the Japanese. Over time, that's no longer Japan. You import Polish people to come in and have children on behalf of the Welsh. Over time, they're not really longer Welsh, are they? It's fucking Poland. Or a Polish colony. So, for all this talk of building a new Scotland, for all this talk about independence, which in and of itself is laughable, building a new Scotland and then instantaneously they'll bang on about EU membership, thus rendering the concept of independence redundant and nonsensical. You'd be independent temporarily until you rejoin the European Union. So they wish to gain independence from the UK in order to walk right into the European Union and become a vassal state. All the arguments that they used to use back in the day for independence, that came with the caveat that we would be leaving the EU if we got our independence in 2014. And now they just want to leave the UK in order to rejoin the EU. Really screams out nationalism, doesn't it? Joining the EU as an independent nation would provide significant advantages for you and for Scotland. Yeah. And I mean, there's always the risk, of course, that the UK overall is going to end up back in the EU, depending on who gets in the next election and whatnot. There's always that risk. But as far as the Scottish government is concerned, as far as the trajectory that modern day commonplace politics is concerned, this is the argument that will not fucking die. And it distracts from many of the much larger issues and helps to just sort of solidify the never-ending division in this country. It's quite a sad state of affairs, really, where there's not really any legitimate Scottish nationalists out there at all. The only thing that resembles a so-called Scottish nationalist is the people that profess a desire to leave the UK to rejoin the EU. And they're all on board with, progressivism and all the things that we've kind of gone over the night. Anybody can be Scottish. As long as you're not English, you can be Scottish, irrespective of what part of the world you originate from. Being part of Europe gives Scotland access to the world's largest single market, enhances our influence in the world, and can help us work towards a fairer, greener future. Yeah. But of course, what's the fucking point of obtaining your independence? What's the fucking point of, fighting for the future of Scotland when the future of Scotland is sort of in jeopardy if these people get their way? Because there won't be a Scotland when all's said and done, when the Scots cease to exist. And that's the reality of the matter. And that's really the sort of crux of everything that I've spoken about tonight, because this notion of normalizing these concepts to children, pushing relentlessly for border control, pushing for immigration to come in and save the day, while giving absolutely no pause for thought for what it means long term for our demography, for our people. And that's the reality of the matter. So identity, as they try their damnedest to render it redundant, if they're successful, it will make the process a lot simpler, really. It's kind of, I don't really want to end on a pure depressing note, but kind of is the reality of the matter as far as I'm concerned. I can't think of one Scottish politician out there who even says anything close to what I've just gone on about there. There's not one. Nobody acknowledges that the Scots are a people. Nobody acknowledges that the long-term ramifications of opening the door to immigration means that you're actually helping to aid the cause of declining birth rates and whatnot. You're helping to exacerbate the issues of demographic decline. But it's fine because we're all one. They call it independence within the European Union. No, exactly. And they even have said themselves, I've got clips on my channel of them saying as much, that they acknowledge that in the event of us rejoining the European Union, we'd have to give up some sovereignty. Well, what the fuck does independence mean if you've got no sovereignty? kind of goes without saying. It's just never ending, really. It's never ending. So it's very easy to get disheartened in that regard. And I was watching a Chief British stream a wee while ago, and he actually made reference to you could clip this segment if you wanted, and obviously I never did, but he kind of went on a wee rant about how he's like a Scottish nationalist and whatnot, and sort of refreshing to hear. But I'm kind of in the camp of, well, you can't really be a Scottish nationalist if you're like a white nationalist at the same time. You're one or the other, really. But that's here nor there. My point is, though, I just think that there's a serious lack of anything that resembles Scottish nationalism nowadays. And if there was ever to be any political change in the right direction, then surely there would need to be a sort of resurgence of that, surely. But instead of that, it's just simply European Union or UK. Never ending, really. I don't know. But on that note, I think that'll probably do it for the night, like. Stop sharing. Merry Christmas, buds. Ah. You know, it's one of those sort of points of contention, obviously, because I've had shit in the past from people like, oh, you just make videos online and whatnot. You need to get out in the real world. And they, of course, they've got a point. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm of the firm belief, especially at present, I'm not saying indefinitely going forward, but at present, the system in and of itself is completely and utterly corrupt, polluted, and by and large rigged against the normal common man. Therefore, any potential threat to them would be, snuffed out very quickly. That's why you always get these limp-wristed opposition parties that are allowed to fester, such as in the Scottish context, Scottish Family Party, say all the right things on certain issues, but when it comes to where it really matters, pressing issues of our time, such as immigration and long-term demographic consequences, not a peep. And of course, there's other parties out there, but I don't fucking know who they are, really. Then you've got the National Housing Party. I think they're more UK and whatnot. I mean, even if I was to join a political party or get behind one, I couldn't, just from my moral compass, I just couldn't get behind a sort of unionist party. But I'm not really somebody that advocates for independence anymore anyway. I was an independent supporter, and in the ideal world I would be, but I think there's more pressing issues at hand. But that said, I still couldn't get on board with a unionist party. So that's, in and of itself, divides people, but there's just nothing at all resembling a Scottish nationalist party. And I think as well, on that note, there's a lot of the issues stem from opposition in Scotland, where the unionist supporters are people that just oppose the SNP and whatnot. They will call the SNP and their supporters nationalists. They're not nationalists, it goes without saying, but it's pretty foolish to call them nationalists. You should know better. But no, I don't know. I just feel that, it depresses me to look at all that's going on in schools, etc. But it's important to pay attention to it because that is the trajectory that the future is on. The children of today are the adults of tomorrow. And if they're punting that shit into children's heads, you kind of get a bit of an idea as to what the futures they intend will look like. And there's just too much of a fascination by the everyday man and woman with simple shit like independence or unionism. They should really be looking at what's being taught in schools. They should really be considering what it all means going forward. Record low birth rates, wow. It's been celebrated that we're reaching new population highs. What does that mean for your grandkids? Have you considered that? Why is there never any discussion from anybody that's got any political power? Why is there never any discussion about what could be done to rectify these issues? Why is there never any discussion about why these issues are occurring? Why is it never discussed? Why is it always the case that we will just import people? That's what I'm perplexed by. Yeah. See, I'm very much of the same belief that politics is rigged at this point. I mean, I'm not going to shit on anybody that wishes to go down that route and pursue politics. If you think that you've got an opportunity or you think that you can make change in that regard, then more power to you. But don't fucking tell me that I need to get on board with you. And if I don't, then I'm somehow a detriment or a coward or any of the other expletives that you wish to use. It's just, you do you, I'll do me. But quite often, that's the one thing that annoys me, really, is like some of these people who are of the firm belief that we just need enough people to rally behind a political party, they will chastise people like me, but yet when it's all said and done, when you look back with a bit of hindsight, they've not really achieved anything fucking different to what I have, which is a big fat nothing. So, it's just one of those things, sticks and stones, or don't throw stones in glass houses, But what I will say on a more positive note, though, is becoming a lot harder to avoid what's taking place here. Everyday normies, time and time again, whether it's like the jibby jabby injections. I know so many people now who've taken them, who should never have, but they did. but they've said themselves they'll never take another one. That's just one example. I know so many people who are getting sick to death of being berated for being white privilege, etc. I know so many people who are questioning the climate narratives. I know so many people who are opposed to the LGBT stuff. If they hear anything about it, they're opposed to it. You know, these are encouraging signs, I suppose, but albeit what I've said there's anecdotal, but 5 years ago or whatever, could I have said that? Probably not. But I do know a lot of people now in my everyday life who are starting to see things a bit differently to how they once did. But despite all of that, the status quo continues on unabated, and that's a problem, in all honesty, especially where the climate stuff is concerned. All the moves to push you out of your car, LEZ zones cropping up across multiple Scottish cities as of next year. Why? All in the name of climate change. We need to do more. There's just this sort of general political consensus across party that this is a thing, needs to be solved, needs to be rectified, you know, despite the vast majority of people fucking think it's a load of nonsense. Or at the very bare minimum, they don't believe that any of these things that they wish to implement are required or necessary, but they go on ahead anyway. So, I don't know. But yeah, just to sort of conclude all this, like, you know, I went through a lot of shit there in regards to like anti-racism, etc., because that's what's happening in schools, obviously. But identity is something that I feel is been under attack for some time. Obviously, it's something I think needs to sort of be more emphasized. I don't think that enough people do emphasize that really. You know, you can only do so much. You can only say what you can say, etc. But when it comes to the quotes, not the quotes, sorry, what am I on about? The questions regarding immigration, long term, what it means. What is the point in advocating for an independent Scotland when you're quite happy to accept the mere notion that immigration is the answer to our woes? If you're all prepared to open your borders and import people, live and let live, be progressive and whatnot, you've conceded, or you've just given up your children's future in that respect. Can't have it both ways. You know? And yeah, it is anti-white. Absolutely anti-white. If you go onto, I mean, I've done this before, but any of the sort of websites where these so-called anti-racists spew their bile and produce their publications and whatnot, just go through any of their glossaries and you'll see it quite clear as day. It's all about whiteness and white privilege and white fragility, etc. You know, redefining words, redefining racism. Racism is like prejudice plus power, and they imply that we've got power. Therefore, you know, we can't be the victims of racism. No. Yeah, all geared towards anti-whiteism. I mean, just this, for example, before I go, I've still got some tabs. Present this. I mean, this is another example of like what they're fucking doing to children. Teaching slavery in Scotland. Oh, I forgot that one. But no, where is she? Scottish identity. Yeah, that's here. Look at this. Scotland's curriculum is designed to be a coherent and flexible and enriched curriculum, blah, 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 right? But this bit here. A curriculum which represents everyone involves normalizing diversity within the curriculum so that learners routinely see language, content, and imagery that reflects the diversity of culture, identities, and experiences, including their own. This normalizing is more powerful than one-off lessons that explore diversity or celebrate difference. The latter can have the unintended consequence of othering those who are not from the ethnic group which is in the majority. As celebrating difference may reinforce stereotypes, careful consideration is advised. But this is the point here that I find this bit vulgar. Normalizing diversity within the curriculum as opposed to normalizing the white majority ethnic group gives every learner the important message of being valued and belonging. Right? So what that says, obviously, is they wish to move away from what's commonly accepted, that there is a white majority ethnic group. They wish to sort of instead promote diversity and normalize diversity, to use their own words, you know? I mean, it has to be said as well, though, there was never at any point been a normalization process to hammer home the point that there is a white majority ethnic group. It's just, it's observed. It's an observable fact, but we need to change that. We need to normalize diversity. This website here, of course, comes directly from the Scottish government, by the way. Scotland's curriculum, anti-racist curriculum principles. All these websites. Oh, man, just bogging. Click here to see the anti-racist curriculum principles. Seeing if there's a anti-racist educator would be handy right about now. But it all stems from the Scottish government, anti-racism in education. But yeah, I will show people, just if they've not seen it before, anti-racist educator. Look at their glossary. Race, racism, privilege, person of color, political blackness, whiteness, white fragility, critical race theory, white supremacy, racial literacy, power, tokenism, decolonization, anti-black racism. I mean, these are all, this website, for anybody that's not aware, this website was where all these crackpots used to write their shit before they were taken to work with the Scottish government to reform our academia. Now they all sit on government panels and influence change. But this was then prior to that, where they were just simply punting out their anti-white shite for none to see because they were irrelevant and fringe. Based in Scotland, the Anti-Racist Educator is a collective of educational stakeholders, including students, teachers, and parents. And they aim to see a future that's equitable, free from racial injustice, and critically engaged with issues of power, identity, and privilege. Yeah. So that's where they were. Now fast forward to where they are. Future's bleak. But anyway, I think I've gone on for too long even. I've kind of soured the mood for anybody that was looking for a chippy wee stream. But nonetheless, hope you all have a good Christmas. I'll be live with Clive and Scott Sarmer on the 27th on his channel. And, aye. In the meantime, don't do anything I wouldn't do. Adios, folks. Bye-bye.